What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 424 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer to talk Emirates NBA Cup. In the quarterfinal stages, we are through group play. We've got the matchups. We've got the bracket. We're going to talk about some predictions. Going to do a lot of previewing for the first round, or second round, I should say, first round of the knockout series. Some interesting matchups from a defensive matchup standpoint that I really want to get into. I like these matchups. I'm excited to talk about them with Dink. We'll talk a little bit about what we thought about the big Tuesday night that resulted in getting these brackets. A lot of blowout, unfortunately. With me do so again, Drew Dinkmeyer. Dink, how's it going?
It's going well. I agree with you that last night was underwhelming. I was hoping for drama. I was hoping for point differentials mattering and teams like trying to run up the score late. I was hoping for close late game situations between Detroit and Milwaukee and Orlando and New York, and we got nothing. So really underwhelming final night of group play for the NBA Emirates Cup, which is disappointing because I do think this competition is bringing out some fun features in terms of competitiveness from the league, but it was really not showcased last night. Also agree with you that the quarterfinal round matchups are extremely interesting. I think also from a narrative perspective, just in terms of the history between Trae Young and the New York Knicks, Trae Young going into Madison Square Garden. You've got Dallas and Oklahoma City. Can Oklahoma City avenge their loss last year in the playoffs to Dallas? Oklahoma City getting the chance to do that on home court. And then you've got Orlando and Milwaukee, who had a little, like, before the Magic got this next wave of their talent, Orlando and Milwaukee kept finding each other in the playoffs for a while there. So I think it's an interesting subset of quarterfinal round matchups. We'll talk a little bit about those, but definitely want to hone in on what happened last night.
Yeah, let's start with I think the blowouts were the headline. The Knicks absolutely stomped the Magic last night. Just played a ton of drop, kept the Magic out of the paint. Franz couldn't get in a good rhythm, and obviously their offense has gone nuclear. And Brunson wasn't even great. I think the headline for them was just a well-rounded scoring. They got scoring output out of everyone. They shot the ball extremely well. Had everything kind of going offensively. We'll talk more about that there, and then the Bucks just, oh my God, just 3-point avalanche. Would they shoot 71% in the first half on 3-pointers? I think it was. And that was kind of their strategy. That the Pistons are a bit of paint packers there. So yeah, with those two big blowouts and the Bucks locking down, Bucks are perfect in group play. They haven't lost in group play yet in the Emirates NBA Cup. So what do you think about those two blowouts? Just recapping, and then we'll talk about in a little bit those matchups going forward.
Yeah, let's start with the Bucks, who are 9-1 in their last 10. You mentioned perfect in group stage, have kind of ascended back up the Eastern Conference standings here, as we thought they eventually would when they get things right. Just really great play from Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard, and the secondary pieces. I think Doc Rivers is starting to find a little bit more trust, a little bit more confidence in some of these secondary pieces in terms of how to use them. We've seen the minutes go really up and down for guys like Andre Jackson Jr., Gary Trent Jr. Gary Trent Jr. started shooting the ball well of late, and that sort of has made everything feel a little bit more real. But yeah, the 3-point shooting last night, 23 for 41 overall. They had made more threes going into the last, I think, 6 minutes of this game than Detroit had even attempted. Now, Detroit ended up getting up to 33 threes. They took a bunch of threes kind of late in the fourth quarter. But anytime that the math game was just so lopsided in Milwaukee's favor in this one, if they could get that kind of shooting with Giannis driving, it's really tough. Taurean Prince was 4 for 4. AJ Green was 3 for 3. Gary Trent Jr. was 3 for 5. Bobby Portis was 4 for 7. Everybody shot the ball well with the exception of Brook Lopez from 3. So if they get that kind of 3-point shooting surrounded with Giannis and Dame, very, very strong. And their defense has really looked a lot better over this last 10-game sample as well. They're getting better commitment on the boards. They're cutting down transition a little bit. And that's all kind of flowing well. So the next step for Milwaukee in terms of their evolution is, when will we see Chris Middleton and how will he get integrated? Because all the while this offseason, we were talking about the improved depth that they added with guys like Gary Trent Jr., with guys like DeLon Wright, Taurean Prince, that we were excited about building out this depth. They've been a little bit shorthanded without Chris Middleton at the start of this season. So I think, for Philadelphia 76ers fans out there, you can see this is a path. Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference, you get hot over a 10-game stretch. All of a sudden, you're right back in the mix of things. and you can start to feel better about kind of building towards the playoffs, because the East just isn't going to run away from you. There's those top 4 teams, and then there's really nobody else that's going to run away from you. So I think all good things for Milwaukee. The shooting is really the differentiator. When they shoot the ball really well, they're going to be super tough to beat.
Yeah, and just Turin's been. I think he's still first in the NBA in 3-point shooting. I mean, he had to have gone up. He made everything last night,
Yeah.
so he's been pretty good for them overall. And just to check that, he's got to have a nice cushion now. Yeah, 56.6% from three. Second place, Jokic, 52.2%. Dude's been too good. Norm also the only other guy over 50% at 50.7. Just to cover that stat. Yeah. So Knicks, what do you think? Again, just man, when they're on, they look unbeatable. They look like Boston levels of good. They are
Yes.
inconsistent. They do have major defensive issues with pick and roll stuff. But like I said, they played a lot of drop, and I thought it was really effective with the way the Magic really like to hammer the paint and own that on both ends. And then, yeah, just really well-rounded offense. Even Brunson. Brunson was like kind of crappy. I had high hopes for him with the way the Magic kind of put their ball handlers on islands a little bit, but Suggs did a pretty good job on him. But yeah, just quick takeaways from what you learned with the Knicks. This game was closer than it looked. It ended at a 15-point game. The Magic, there were really two kind of drama things. It was the Magic, can they not get blown out enough to keep Boston out of it? And they did. They played Franz Wagner 39 minutes, Jalen Suggs 39 minutes. So they knew what they had to do, and they kind of got the ship right as they had a really nice fourth quarter edge to keep them in this tournament. So yeah, both these teams are in it. The Magic, Goga Bitadze got hurt last night. He had to be almost helped off the court. It sounds like we think he's going to miss today on Wednesday, but that could be another thing too. There's other stuff. Draymond will talk about that. He talked about Middleton, but the Knicks are pretty healthy now. Obviously, no Mitch and all that, but yeah, any takeaways from this matchup with both these two teams headed into different matchups in the quarterfinals?
Yeah, a couple different things. So first, on the Knicks side of things, you mentioned when they've played at their best this season, they look. Boston's the right comparison in my mind as well, in terms of like how free flowing the offense looks, how the shooting can kind of be overwhelming, how the defensive intensity can kind of be overwhelming at times, in the floor spacing that they get with Karl Anthony Towns, similar to Boston with Kristaps Porzingis. Obviously, the consistency hasn't been there from the Knicks, and it's been we complained about Boston's consistency a lot last year, but it's been very different with the Knicks. Boston's consistency last year manifested itself in long runs in game that they'd play from big leads. They'd give up those big leads. Sometimes they'd lose close games that they gave up those big leads. It wasn't Boston getting wrecked by teams. That's the inconsistency we've seen from the Knicks at times this year, like going into Utah and getting absolutely wrecked and just lambasted. And so some of that is, I think, just early season, these guys trying to find their footing, still working on playing together, getting chemistry built, fitting in Mikal Bridges, fitting in Karl Anthony Towns. But I think some of that is some of the inconsistency of Mikal Bridges. It's the second consecutive game from Mikal Bridges that he's played really well. I think when he plays really well, the Knicks are going to be super, super tough. OG's been fantastic all year. Josh Hart is a model of consistency. Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on the offensive end, you know what you're getting each and every night. So Bridges is kind of the barometer for them. He was great in this game, 8 for 13 overall, was aggressive early, 19 points, 5 dimes, 2 steals, played good defense as well in this one. That's been wavering back and forth during the course of the season. I think when Bridges is good, the Knicks are really, really good. And I think it's been an up and down start to this Knicks season, but I think the thing that Knicks fans can hold on to is the ceiling that we've seen from this team in spurts is really, really compelling. And in the Eastern Conference, in terms of the teams that we've seen play at a ceiling that looks like it could challenge Boston at any point this season, I think it's Cleveland and I think it's New York. I don't think anybody else has shown that ceiling yet. Now, Philadelphia, we haven't seen them fully healthy. We haven't seen them playing well. Milwaukee, I still don't think it's been quite that level of play that we've seen in the higher end. Maybe when they integrate Middleton, we'll see that. But that's the encouraging spot for New York. Now we just got to work on the consistency side of things, and hopefully Mikal Bridges, it looks more like the Mikal Bridges we've seen the last few games compared to the previous games. Orlando, the takeaway here for me was I think Goga Bitadze is a lot more important than people understand for Orlando. And they had really held up well in this time period without Paolo Banchero, in parts because of a softer schedule, and in parts because they are just so good defensively on the interior. And Wendell Carter Jr., I've long been a fan. He's not the same defensive player that Goga Batadze is. He's not really particularly close to the same defensive player that Goga Batadze is. And Goga, because of his ability to contribute on the offensive boards and some of the short roll passing and different stuff, he's started to add some of his things to his game that Wendell Carter Jr. had offensively. That, like, Wendell Carter Jr.'s kind of biggest strengths were offensive versatility in the sense that he could short roll, he could screen set, he could pick and pop, he could do different things. He wasn't great at anything individually, but he could kind of do all these things. So it brought to offensive versatility. Goga's added some of that versatility to the offense, and then he brings a higher defensive ceiling in terms of the rim protection stuff. And I thought he was just really missed in this game. Some of the defensive pressure that they put on teams just isn't the same when Wendell Carter Jr. is the back line compared to Goga Batadze. And you can check their, the block rates, the percentage of field goal attempts allowed at the rim, different things like that, all in favor of Goga Batadze compared to Wendell Carter Jr. So I think his absence was really felt in this one. And I think it sort of highlights where long-term, I know they got Wendell to kind of a really friendly deal. They signed all these bigs to extensions. But long-term, it looks to me like Goga Batadze should be the guy that they should be leaning into at the center position more and more, as long as he can stay healthy. And that's been a question mark for Goga throughout his career.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how they play in between now and their first series. If they do look like they are giving up a lot of points, to your point, that's like, okay, hey, he could be really, really impactful, more so than, the box score might say. And then lastly, Paolo, could he be back in time? He was supposed to miss, quote unquote, a few weeks. That timetable came out on November 1st. So he could be back pretty soon. Been traveling with the team as well. We saw him on the bench yesterday. So that's something to watch. We don't really have a great idea there. But yeah, he could be back for this first one. The whole timetable was 4 to 6 weeks. That was given out on Halloween. That's now. So he could be back for that. And that could kind of alleviate some offensive concerns for sure. Defense, I don't know. But having another body, if Goga is going to be out with this somewhat, this isn't a mild ankle sprain, like biggest game of the year, late scratch.
Yep.
Like, this wasn't like a, hey, let's manage you, kind of a thing there. So yeah, it wasn't, they are back to back, but I mean, there was no way they wanted to win this game, to lay that out there. I think I don't think we need to talk about Detroit. Really great story to see them kind of have a chance there. But let's get to the West. And so So from the Suns' perspective, it was looking good. They were like, okay, hey, I was like, oh, the Suns going to get a home cup game. Can I get to go to my first Emirates NBA Cup game? Because it's a light slate that day. I'd have the time to go. That didn't happen. The Suns took care of business, and it looked like they had a chance to maybe sneak in. They wouldn't have been home actually, but yeah. Anyways, I was pretty excited watching that. But then what happened was the Mavs just get red hot. They had a 26-4 free throw edge to go on an 11-0 run to get a really big comeback win. So the Mavs sneak in there. What do you think of the Mavs just getting so hot down the stretch to sneak in there and get the wild card in the West?
Yeah, I mean, the Mavs over the course of the last, since the playoff run, have shown a level of resolve and composure in clutch situations. And you could look back on, you could attribute this to Luka and go back even further, right? Previous playoff runs, late game situations, Luka's been very effective, and especially in key games and closeout games, extremely effective. But they collectively seem to play with a lot of confidence in these situations of, hey, we can kind of get through anything together. And I thought they played with that level of confidence. PJ Washington continues to make big plays in key moments, whether it was the Oklahoma City series last year where he was maybe their most important player on the floor in a shocking outcome. And then last night he was again just everywhere he needed to be. 18, 8, and 7, 4 for 6 from 3, picks up a steal and 2 blocks, plus 21 in his 38 minutes. Just dominant stuff from PJ Washington. And you had talked about when he first came over how they were using him as kind of a defensive anchor in a role that we never would have expected for PJ Washington. So it's a big shout out to the Dallas front office for kind of correctly scouting and understanding that a player in a different situation could look a lot better. I think that's one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in the NBA is some of these franchise altering trades and transactions have been with players that were in bad situations. Kristaps Porzingis in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
Boston acquires him. They integrate Kristaps into their situation. It's like, oh, this is a nuclear superpower option that they just assembled with Kristaps Porzingis. And PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, who were in ugly situations in Washington and Charlotte and Washington respectively, they come into Dallas in a different situation with more structure. They look great. And the free throw edge, I don't have too much to comment on. 44-14 is really hard to overcome, let alone 26-4 in the fourth quarter. I'm sure Taylor Jenkins has lots of thoughts on that. But ultimately, Dallas gets it done in the last. They go on a 13-0 run in a 2-minute span from 3 minutes left, where their defense just really locks in. And yes, there were free throws there, but they also made threes to kind of put this away. And so the whole dynamic, the only drama that we had on last night was this game. And in the last 2 minutes of this game, Dallas took all of that drama and basically crumpled it up and threw it away and said, nope, we're done here. We're ending this thing now. And it was impressive.
Yeah, it was great on that end. But there was actually drama on the other side of the bracket because Houston, they either could have won and locked up home court, or they would have needed the Warriors to lose, and it looked like both was going to go. It was going to go horribly wrong. They had, I mean, we could talk about it. Udoka got ejected. Alfred Şengün got ejected. Udoka had one of the best rants of the season so far. He said, "Open your eyes and get some bleeping glasses." And he called, I forget what ref. He called a ref out by name. Like, he's getting a big fine coming to him. And yeah, coach of the month, Alfred Şengün wins Western Conference Player of the Week, and they both get tossed in that game. And it was pretty bad. Like, Dylan Brooks was getting some really soft calls. Şengün was getting some soft calls there. So I don't know. I don't really want to talk too much about the refs, but that was, and then also should note that I think the Kings made 15 straight shots to really, really build a huge lead there. And then on the other side, the Warriors had this game. It was in the bag, and then they give up a 10-0 run to close. And man, Steve Kerr he was not happy. He really called out Brandon Podziemski in like a big degree, saying he needs to be a smart player. He says, I hope he hears this, talking about him making mistakes and he has to be a smart player. It was a really big call out from Steve Kerr there. So yeah, what'd you make of the Rockets and all the ref shenanigans? Kings did play great, give them some credit. And then, the Warriors kind of folding this one to make them now go on the road.
Yeah, I did not treat this with, the same amount of gravitas and drama because both teams were in. So it was the difference between a home court situation and not. So I was looking at these games through the lens strictly of like regular season basketball. So I wasn't thinking of it through that context. I will say, really nice win for Sacramento on the whole, right? Houston has been awesome all season long, especially defensively. Houston's been really tough to figure out and solve. And here, Sacramento puts up 66 points in the second half, 120 points overall, and just kind of runs away from them, honestly. They shot the ball well from 3, 14 for 30 in the game as a whole, but didn't shoot the ball particularly well from the free throw line. And again, it's one of these, Mike Brown super condensed, rotation situations. The thing that I'll note with Sacramento is when they get good play from Kevin Huerter or Keon Ellis, they are a different team. When they get bad play from both of those guys, neither of them are a positive contributor. It is an uphill battle for Sacramento, simply because they need one of those guys to play well enough to be on the floor enough defensively to kind of hold the other team back, because the combination, of Monk, DeRozan, Sabonis leaves some things to be desired from a defensive perspective. I thought Huerter played really effectively this game. They got a lot of good minutes from Isaac Jones as well. That was really helpful in this one. And then their main guys shot the ball great. De'Aaron Fox 4 for 6 from 3, Malik Monk 4 for 8, Keegan Murray 3 for 5. Really strong offensive performance from Sacramento. And when they're at home, man, when they get their offense going, the momentum of that crowd in Sacramento is just really, really kind of jarring. It's one of the few places, I shouldn't say few, but it's one of the places in the NBA where I feel like the crowd really starts to influence the antics of the game. And it felt like the game was boiling kind of throughout the game, and then tempers flared. Dylan Brooks and Jabari Smith get into an altercation with De'Aaron Fox, And so I think that, Sacramento at home, it's a special thing that they got going on with the beam there in Sacramento. And I thought it was just a great game. It was just a really, really good game. I thought it like Houston's building up this edge to them as like the villains, right? Built on Dylan Brooks and the defensive intensity that he plays with. Amen Thompson can be pretty physical. Tari Eason can be pretty physical as well. Shagun. So I feel like they're building up this kind of bad boys mentality to them that I really kind of dig. And I'm sure Ime Udoka likes as well. And so I thought they kind of got to put to them last night. Sacramento just played great. And then Golden State and Denver. Golden State, end of game, the ball is just not in the hands of Steph Curry enough. Honestly, I mean, I think he took like 2 shots in the last 2 minutes of the game. And when everything's crumbling around, if the ball's not getting in the hands of Steph Curry, like what are we even doing here? Yeah. And so Denver on the other side, you saw every possession down Jokic. Every possession down Jokic, Jamal 2-man game, or Jokic kind of in transition, and Jokic just put that game away. And before we logged on, I saw our good friends at Playback who, a bunch of people have done content on Playback. Gilbert Arenas is doing content on Playback. Kendrick Perkins, and I saw they had clipped Kendrick Perkins talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo being the best player in the NBA, and forget who the other person was, talking about how they believe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the best player in the NBA. And I'm like, we're still doing this stuff, huh? We're still doing this. We're still doing this. I feel like people aren't watching Denver if people think other guys are the best player in the NBA, because what Jokic is doing this year is just, it continues to be absurd. And he took that game over, and Denver got the ball in the hands of their best player. Golden State did not get the ball in the hands of their best player, and it was over. Golden State has no answers for Jokic, and without Dre, I don't think they have answers for him with Dre, but without Dre, they really had no answers. And once Looney fouled out, it was like Jokic is going to score every time down, and he did.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about the Warriors because that Draymond injury is pretty legit. But I do want to note one thing for the Rockets. It's a teensy bit of a concern. So after the game, Tari Eason apparently went after a fan and went into the stands, according to Sam Amick. So there's a chance I don't think they would suspend him for a cup game, but like I think Tari's getting a suspension. So they maybe suspend him for a game or two before the quarterfinal. I don't think they would dare put him out for the cup game, but something to watch. Udoka will get a fine. I don't think Şengün will get anything. Just got the double tech and thrown out. But did want to note that Tari is going to be certainly getting investigated for that there. Okay, so let's start previewing these two series here. Let's start with the Eastern Conference to begin this off. Do you want to start with the Knicks series first? I know you like to talk Knicks.
Wherever my hometown team now.
Yeah, man.
Wherever you want to go, we can start Knicks. Yeah. Hawks obviously playing really, really well, and now getting healthy. They kind of managed their way through the start of the early part of the season without Bogdanovic. With DeAndre Hunter really banged up and also having some personal reasons that he was away from the team. And now they're healthy and their schedule has slowed down a little bit. And their starting unit is really good, like really good. I don't know if people understand how good, but like the Capella, Dyson Daniels, Trey, Jalen Johnson, that 4-man combination, I think is like +7 per 100 possessions, something like that this year. Really, really good. And now that you have the depth to add in Bogdanovic and DeAndre Hunter in there, along with Reece Shea, who's still a young player, still developing, they're just really intriguing as a team as a whole. And I think you've seen that with their high-end wins, right? They beat Cleveland twice. They beat Boston without Trae Young. Trae's been playing really well, despite having this Achilles issue that is limiting perhaps some of his offensive ceiling in terms of usage, shooting. He's really playing kind of the Steve Nash, John Stockton distributor kind of role in really setting up the offense really well. So this Atlanta team, I think a lot of people are going to look at these 8 finalists in the NBA in-season cup, and they're going to say like, I don't think we're going to see Atlanta come playoff time. All these other teams I think we're going to see come playoff time. And I don't think that's right. I think you're going to see Atlanta come playoff time as long as they're able to stay healthy the rest of the season. And I think, certainly it's not Boston, it's not Cleveland, but they won that group. They won the group with Boston and Cleveland. So I think Atlanta's probably going to be a little bit undersold here, just because their starting unit, I think, is so much like their issue is depth. and their depth was really tested for a while when they were without Bogdanovich and DeAndre Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
With those guys, I think this is going to be a really good game against the Knicks. I think they're going to play them pretty tight. Now, we'll see which version of the Knicks shows up because that's really the differentiator. But don't sleep on Atlanta. The Hawks are that starting unit's very good. And in these cup games, I would expect to see extended playoff level rotations because if you look at the schedule, right, the Knicks play Monday. They're the only team that plays. They're the only team in the cup that plays Monday. But the last game before this game on Wednesday for Knicks and Hawks for the Hawks will be on Sunday. So it's a lot of rest to be able to handle. I think you're going to see big rotations, tight rotations, and I think it'll be a competitive game.
Yeah, we've seen the Hawks play pretty good defense lately. They've been a big 3-point funnel, but 2 of their last 3 games, they really shored up on the 3-point defense, but they are really protecting the paint this year. Big difference from last year. And as you noted for Trae Young, just some stats that I put in matchups for today. 22.1 potential assists over his last 10. The gap from the second place player is 16.3. That's Nikola Jokic. I mean, that's just insane. 22.1 over a 10-game sample is absurd. And then also the scoring's been really bad. Among 22 guys with 125 plus pick and roll handler possessions, he's dead last at 0.78 per possession. He's been really bad. His scoring off drives is way down. So yeah, I like that. Well, Steve Nash was way more efficient than that. But I like that. He's almost like he's like a pass first point guard now, which is unusual for a guy who he could score 30 a night, a couple of years ago. Pre DeJounte, he was averaging 30. So yeah, concern there. But yeah, DeAndre Hunter's played awesome. Riche's had some pretty good on-ball defense with his size on the wing. I think he's kind of coming around. Not a big offensive player yet. And Capella, we talked about this previously. His defense has been really, really good so far. So yeah, and then Jalen's been fantastic, Jalen Johnson. So pretty well-rounded team. I would say among the first round series here, or the first knockout round series, I feel the least good about this one just because I don't know what Knicks I'm going to get.
Right.
I think that their defensive scheme isn't as favorable here against the way the Hawks play with their pace and with Trae being able to distribute and spread the ball around. So this is a tough one to kind of bet, but I still think the Knicks are going to win just because they are pretty healthy here. I think Brunson's playing great. The last few weeks he's been kind of in a pretty good groove offensively. And got to mention, we talked about the Knicks earlier. I mean, how good was Cat? I mean, Cat's defense in the drop was really good yesterday. He's been able to step up. We saw him what he did last year against the Nuggets. In general, he steps up when when the important games are out there. So I think the Knicks have the advantage. Not something I'd be confident in. Do you have any prediction for that game next week?
Yeah, I just wanted to hone in on one thing you mentioned about Trae Young in terms of the finishing. I think that is probably directly attributed to this Achilles issue, in the sense that like Achilles, you're not going to be trusting your lift. You're not going to be trusting kind of your acceleration, your jump, your get off to be able to finish at the rim. And I think that's what you're seeing. So I think you're seeing a lot of times Trae is driving with the intention of collapsing the defense and finding somebody else to get the ball to, not the intention of trying to find his own shot. And so I think sometimes when he's shooting, it's out of like, oh God, there was nothing here. I now need to make a shot instead of, so I think it's like a tougher situation because he's driving with a different intention. And I think specifically it'll be interesting to monitor going into MSG where the Knicks crowd is going to be unruly against Trae Young. They always are, but especially in this scenario, they're going to be unruly against Trae Young. And will that kind of encourage Trae Young to play differently than he's been playing? And I think that's the thing that I'll be watching for early on is like, is Trae going to have the composure when everybody in the stadium is heckling him and there's a bunch of F Trae Young chants going on, which is probably what we're going to see happen in New York because the people here are crazy. And is he going to try to respond to that by being the hero in the villain's shoes? And if he is, I don't know that he's healthy enough to kind of carry that burden. And against a Knicks team that's probably going to play a lot of drop and say like, go ahead, Trae, let's see it. Let's see you kind of lead the team offensively. And let's try to cut off some of the water to the other stuff here. I'm interested in that. That's the one thing that I think if like Trae comes out and tries to be really aggressive from a scoring perspective, it might work against them in the way that they've been playing offensively. So I'm with you in the unpredictability of which Knicks team we're going to see show up, but I think it's going to be a great environment. And I think a great environment for a lot of these guys, I think it's advantage Knicks. So
Yep.
I'll lean on the side of the Knicks in this one. I am interested and will be interested in the first quarter, especially to see if Trey is trying to be more aggressive with his shot. If it is, I think that's actually perhaps a negative right now while Trey's playing through this Achilles issue. If he was fully healthy, I wouldn't treat it as much of a negative. But I think the shots, the stats you're outlining around his lack of efficiency
Mhm.
around the rim and as a pick and roll handler from a scoring perspective, I think are reflective of that injury issue.
Yeah, and Quinn Snyder actually brought that up. He usually was trying to be coy, but he mentioned that it's kind of bothering him, which was unusual for a coach to kind of. And he's been, very, very coy going back. I mean, he wasn't saying a damn thing about Onyeka Okongwu when they were sitting him in the preseason.
Right.
He doesn't like to give that information out. So that was pretty telling to me. Okay, other side. So I think that the Bucks have a lot of advantages here. Maybe Powell coming back, like I said, could kind of change it. But like I said, Orlando really likes to attack the paint and protect the paint. Obviously, Giannis, we'll talk about that. But with the way that the Bucks could execute their drop, or like the way the Knicks did, I think that's going to kind of work in their advantage. Then the Bucks have been top 10 in defense over their last 10 games. Their half-court defense has been pretty good overall. Magic don't run too much. That's been really the Bucks' weak spot. They've been weak in two areas, one of which will hurt them. They haven't been rebounding the ball all that great. Orlando can rebound the ball, can Goga play. That's another big thing hanging out here. So we don't really know what version of the Magic we're going to get with Goga and Paolo possibly coming back here, but they need Goga. Like if Goga's not playing, I mean, it might be bad, man. Like I think that the Bucks are playing so well. Dame is cooking. Dame is second in pick and roll efficiency among that top 22 group that I mentioned. He's really got it going. The Giannis Dame pick and roll stuff that we talked so much about last year, not being really involved until later in the year, is really coming about. And I think Dame is starting to play his best basketball as a Buck. I think that's great. They're getting good minutes out of, you mentioned Gary. Brooks been pretty consistent. I think he'll have a big impact with the way that the Magic like to own the paint. So a lot of Bucks advantages. And then, like I said, for the Magic, they got to get Goga. Maybe Powell would help overall. And Franz would need to have a tippy top A+ game. But I really like where the Bucks stand in this matchup, given how well they've been playing lately.
Yeah, I think the question marks on the Magic's health side lean me towards the advantages that you're articulating on the Milwaukee side. Milwaukee will also have home court advantage in this game as well. I do think Goga is a really big difference maker in this one in particular. I think Goga is such a good rim deterrent in a way that Wendell Carter Jr. is not, that I think that that's really important against this Bucks team in particular. I imagine you'll see a lot of Jonathan Isaac in this game on Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think that's a particularly challenging matchup for Giannis. I don't think there's a lot out there that can be, but Isaac is, a skilled defender that has him. So you put up a front line of Isaac and Goga, and you have Paolo there size-wise as well if Paolo's back, and that lineup is just huge. And rebounding-wise, that lineup should crush on the boards. So I think Orlando would want to turn this game into a real sloppy game, right? Like real sloppy, low scoring. That's kind of what grinded out, what they're going to do. And then I think one-on-one individually from a scoring perspective, Milwaukee's going to have a very good team defense in terms of being able to prevent shots at the rim from having Giannis and Brook Lopez there. But being able to defend the mid-range and stay in front of guys in one-on-one defense, they're not as skilled at that. And so that's where if they have Paolo, I think it's just a big difference maker, because I think there's going to be a need for a lot of isolation scoring from Paolo, from Franz in kind of a lower scoring environment. That's the way that I think Orlando pulls off this win in Milwaukee. But yeah, I think if from Orlando's perspective, you're going to try to turn it into wall off the paint. If we lose by Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr. and Andre Jackson and DeLon Wright making threes, so be it. But try to lose that way. Try to have Suggs or KCP glued to Damian Lillard. Do not help off Damian Lillard under any circumstance. If we lose by Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr., that's cool. It is what it is. And on the Orlando side, I think Milwaukee's probably going to try to turn this game into, we're going to try to take a bunch of threes or rim shots from Giannis, and you're going to try to take a bunch of contested twos, and we're going to see if we can win the math game. And ultimately, for Orlando to win that, to overcome that math game deficit, they're probably going to have to rebound the ball a ton and create extra possessions with turnovers. With Goga Batadze, I think they can do that. With Paolo Banchero, I think they can do that. Without both of them, I think it's a real challenging uphill battle.
Yeah, and I'll note one more thing on the Bucks. I feel like they're pretty. I feel like they're a little sharper when they're leaning into teams that are paint packing, and they kind of come out guns blazing from three. Like last night, they've done it in a couple other matchups too, where like I think Toronto they were taking some early threes. A couple other matchups where like they're really paint packing and they really go into the game thinking like, okay, we got to get our 3-point shot established. So I think they're I think Doc's doing a better job, to credit to him there. Okay, let's shift. Do you want to make any predictions for the east side of the bracket here on if we both think the Bucks and the Knicks are going to go in?
Yeah,
Good.
I would take the Knicks to advance, but maybe you could call me a hometown bias guy. But I just think the ceiling we've seen on the Knicks when they're right is just higher than anything we've seen out there from anybody else.
Yeah, they got the ammo, right? I mean, you got Mikal, who's playing better. You got Josh Hart, who can guard on ball, and then OG Anunoby got to be one of the most physically gifted defenders to guard Giannis. So I think that in tandem with they're a pretty good transition defense. I think that can kind of help. There's a lot of like matchup stuff that really works in Knicks' favor, but again, it's really tough to bet on the Knicks because you don't know if they're going to lay an egg. But in general, I feel like when they play big games, Denver was a big game. They smoked them. Utah, they laid an egg. They suck. They had a huge game last night. I feel like in general, Boston, the opening night, Boston just shut the lights out on them. Like, I feel like in general, they answer the bell there. Okay, let's shift to the West here. You get a lot of on-ball offense and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving against the league's best on-ball defense in Oklahoma City. And then, as you mentioned, rematch from last year when PJ Washington went ham on them. PJ playing a ton of minutes, been playing great overall here. SGA is also playing well. Free throw discrepancy, OKC not getting a lot of free throws. Dallas, we just talked about their free throws. I think that's going to be a kind of a big battle. I could guarantee you that Mark Daigneault will be telegraphing that and all of his stuff. He always says that when they play the Lakers, he like makes the league know, hey, there's a big free throw discrepancy here. So yeah, where do you lean on this matchup? Anything in particular besides PJ Washington, which you could hit again for this matchup?
This is the game I'm most excited about, like by far of the 4 quarterfinal games, and I'm interested to see how much of a difference does Isaiah Hartenstein's presence impact Dallas's ability to challenge the rim and to create extra possessions with offensive rebounding. That is, along with PJ Washington shooting from the corner, that was the recipe last year in a series that Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, from an offensive perspective, were a little bit underwhelming. And that's because of the great defenders that Oklahoma City has. Now, Oklahoma City has added Alex Caruso to that. We'll see if Caruso is available for the quarterfinals. He's missed the last few games. We're both very big on Oklahoma City. I think this is a game that Oklahoma City kind of shows like, hey, we covered up some of these holes, and the way that you beat us last year, we're not necessarily just going to live with this year. We have if they are able to have Hartenstein compete more on the defensive boards, if they're able to have Caruso as another on-ball defender to deal with Luka and Kyrie, I think they're able to not send as much help towards Luka and Kyrie, stay with PJ Washington in the corner, compete on the defensive boards more, and gum up things for Dallas in a way that Dallas was not put into the same level of pressure last year. Mm-hmm. And then I think offensively, that'll ultimately be the case. Like, can J-Dub, who's been fantastic all season long, who was terrible in that series last year, can he have his redemption moment in terms of offensively really being that second lead initiator behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that can create that offense for them? Because last year he was non-existent in the playoffs, and then Josh Giddey was hunted relentlessly by Dallas, and Josh Giddey's not there anymore to be hunted. So I'm very excited for this one. I think it might be lower scoring than people are going to anticipate because I think these two teams match up well with each other defensively. But I'm really looking forward to this one. And I think OKC wins in a squeaker. They're 5.5 point favorites. I think that line looks right to me. But yeah, I'm just so excited for this game.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think OKC's got a lot of advantage. I think their defense is arguably the best equipped to slow down Dallas. They can't let PJ do that again. Because they're still doing it though. They're still living and by that formula that I think they're first in the NBA in catch and shoot points allowed, which was what they did last year. And their rim defense is awesome, and their on ball defense is awesome. That's how they want to play. So are they willing to adapt to that? I don't know. Maybe they start that way, and then if PJ's cooking, they're like, okay, we can't do this anymore. But yeah, I like where they're at. I think having Caruso back would be helpful. It is odd that they're ruling him out so long when this injury didn't sound bad in the first place. But a lot of like I think SGA's taken us another step forward. J Dub's been really so J Dub's strengths last year were like really as a scorer, and this year it's like kind of not. He's like one of the most inefficient pick and roll handlers on the year, but his off ball and transition game is really really good. I think that could kind of push the pace on this Mavericks team that does play faster, but their main guys play so much, and they have such a burden on them that I think that OKC is going to kind of play that way, which could kind of hurt that case about like a lower scoring game that OKC pushes the pace. And like, so my point is like I wouldn't really bet the under, but I don't know. I like where OKC's at. I think that they're really well equipped, and where I don't think Derek Lively's been great. PJ's been great defensively. Quentin Grimes has been awesome. I don't think that Dallas' strengths defensively match up as well with OKC's strengths, whereas I feel the other way, where OKC's strengths defensively are so good against the Mavs. So I probably not betting it, but like you said, it feels right. But I wouldn't be surprised if OKC comes out there and like really puts the hammer down. They're playing so well this year overall. But again, Dallas is playing great. We'll see it. I think Najee Marshall, who's been ill, we talked about this. Guys who miss like a week for illness could take a little bit of time. So if he's not 100% and you don't have the depth on the back end of your rotation, I think that could be a factor given the way that OKC is going to really try to wear down defenders with SGA and J-Dub attacking them. So yeah, I kind of lean OKC. If you made me pick it, I would pick him a cover, but probably not touching it. Anything else? We could just kind of get into the next one.
No, let's get into Golden State Houston.
So let me start with this one. So Draymond's hurt. He said on his podcast that this calf thing was like bothering him like last time he had that calf, and it was like related to his back. And we talked about this yesterday, like, oh, they ruled him out for this game. Maybe they don't care that much. He's hurt. Is it like that questionable tag was garbage? They ruled him out. He's getting imaging. They're trying to figure out what's wrong with him. He could be hurt for this game next week. And if that happens, that is curtains for me. And then also Brandon Podziemski getting called out, like I said, that's not great. They want him to have this job. Steph, we saw Steve Kerr change. They're not comfortable. They're on a 5-game losing streak. We saw the rotation change for Steph. They usually like to play him 2 rotations per half. They didn't do that. They started him, subbed him out early in the first, brought him in late first, played him through the quarter break, subbed him out again, and then played him to close the quarter. That's not how Steph runs rotation. Steph is a sub him in, sub him out, sub him back in. That's how they've been running it for years, but they're trying to figure out this rotation. They don't have answers. They finally cut down that 13-man rotation. They don't want to play Moses Moody enough. They don't have a lot of confidence in Trace Jackson Davis. Kevon Looney's been playing a lot better. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and it really starts with Draymond Green being available, and I've got big concerns. If I find out Draymond's not playing against this Houston team, the way they could attack them with their guard play, with their able to play in the open court, that's like really bad news, especially with the defensive edges they're going to have, which we could talk about. But thoughts on Draymond, thoughts on this rotation, and thoughts on Steph. Like you said, Steph was not very good to close this game. He's been listed with some stuff, had the ankle stuff earlier, getting listed with some knee stuff now. Like it's all bad. I mean, to be in the cup in the quarters when you're playing this poorly and you've got these questions about, oh my God, are they going to make a trade? Oh, what are they going to do with this Melton contract? It's like all bad in Warrior land. What do you think about the Warrior side of this?
Well, I've noted friend of the pod, Sam Esfandiari, has been tweeting a lot about how much Golden State's defense has kind of taken a hit since the loss of DeAnthony Melton. Mm-hmm. And since anytime there's an opportunity to praise my guy, DeAnthony Melton, I'm going to take the opportunity to do so. But I think his absence has really been a big issue for this team in terms of point of attack, perimeter defenders. I think one of the things that the teams that have had the quickest turnarounds in terms of like going from okay to good or good to great, right? It's been the acquisition of a perimeter point of attack defender. Milwaukee Bucks, they became a championship team when they acquired Drew Holiday. Boston Celtics went from really good playoff team, deep playoff runs to championship overwhelming favorite when they acquired Derek White and Drew Holiday. Orlando Magic get a lot better when they acquire Jalen Suggs, when they draft Jalen Suggs, right? Mm-hmm. And so Golden State, D'Anthony Melton is kind of like their version of that. And since they lost him, they've been bad. And so I think it's been a really under the radar loss from an injury perspective in terms of what it's done to Golden State, because they have not been able to find that two-way point of attack defender. There are not many of them in the league. That's why they play Gary Payton like every night for his like 10 to 16 minutes. It's because they need that point of attack defense, but he doesn't bring enough offensively that you can play him 25 to 28 minutes. They need to play Moses Moody. Yep. Moses Moody is their only shot at having that player on the roster. They need to play Moses Moody more. Steve Kerr has had has had an issue with doing so, has been allergic to doing so the last few years, but I think that's ultimately like where they need to get. I don't know if they're going to figure it out or not. Moody was good last night in the game against Denver. Pods is not that guy. And so I know Kerr was critical in his commentary post-game about Podziemski, but like you got it. The guy that fits next to Steph to do all this stuff is Moses Moody. And so I don't know if they're going to figure it out or not, but that's ultimately where they need to get. Now, the concerns that I had preseason, like Golden State over was one of your preseason best bets, right? And when we talked through it, I was like, yeah, this team, I love this team's depth, but what if something happens to Dre or Steph? Like the whole thing is teetering on like Dre and Steph's health. And now we've got Dre saying like, I've got this calf issue that I'm worried about, that I'm worried that if I push through, I'm going to have a much bigger injury that I have to deal with. You've got Steph kind of consistently getting listed with stuff. You've got Steve Kerr talking about like, oh, we're going to try to manage him to a 32-minute rotation. We're going to try to find that. You've got them playing 13 guys. Why are they playing 13 guys? They know that this whole thing is teetering. They know that this whole thing is teetering on, we got to keep these two guys healthy somehow. And so I feel like we're at a little bit of a potential crossroads here in the Warriors season where they're starting to do some of the things like from a panic perspective and like, we got to shorten the rotation. Maybe we got to play Steph more. Maybe, and it's these things that lead to Steph Curry missing time. And if Steph Curry misses time, we're in trouble for Golden State. So I'm a little bit worried about the direction that they're going right now. I think, the season started so smooth when they were getting such great contributions from Buddy Hield, from Andrew Wiggins, from D'Anthony Melton. Melton's no longer there. Wiggins is still playing well. Buddy Hield slowed down considerably in the production that they've gotten from him. And it just hasn't looked the same since the early part of the season. Right now on ESPN Bet, Houston is only 2.5 point favorites. Yep. That seems shockingly small to me.
Yep.
I don't usually like to bet games a week out, but I'm considering it just because that line is surprisingly low to me. I'm with you. I share a lot of concerns about Golden State's immediate future.
Yeah, and just going back, since the 18th of November, it's like I call it an 8-game sample, I don't know exactly, they're 28th in offense. And I think Steph only missed one of those games. So it's not like Steph's missing a lot of time. They're missing a lot of shots. Buddy Hield's gone really cold. Pods, my God, Pods. What are you doing? Like making like fancy passes. Again, Steve Kerr laid into him. They're not getting they don't have anybody that could help Steph out. And the way that Udoka is going to take Steph out of this game is going to be like really, really, really hard for this offense. The way they're playing I almost cursed, so poorly right now against a Houston defense that has consistently been awesome. One of the best. I mean, if the top three defense, in my opinion, no doubt, in my opinion, are Orlando, OKC, Houston, and then there's a little bit of a gap for the rest of the teams. Those three teams are very good. Udoka is one of the sharpest coaches in the NBA. There's a reason why he won Western Conference Coach of the Month. Like you said, I mean, I might just take that now. I don't know if Draymond sounds like he needs to miss a week. They don't want to play Dre through stuff. Why would they ever want to do that? Sure, it's the NBA Cup. It's great. You get the extra commercials. You get to see Rosario Dawes and all the actors and stuff. Michael Imperioli, all that fun stuff. It's great. Shout out Sopranos. Shout out Chris Moltisanti. But I don't know. I think Houston kind of smokes him, man. I do not like how the Warriors are playing, so I might just take that now. And just deal with it. I've been betting on Houston a lot.
I was just looking as we were on. I was just looking to see if it was on Caesars. They don't have a line listed currently, so I'll have to check some other books. But yeah, I'm on the ESPN schedule page, so they're highlighting their odds by ESPN Bet, and I was surprised to see -2.5. That it feels like this should be. Honestly, it feels like it should be -5.5, 6.5. Yeah, like it feels 2.5 feels extremely light given the circumstances.
Yep. So yeah, okay. So we're both taking Houston and OKC rematch from the big Sunday. I wouldn't say
Yep.
upset; it wasn't a big upset, but big win from Houston. What do you think about that matchup? It's pretty tough. I mean, I'm going to pick OKC regardless. I think
Yeah.
OKC is just a better
Yeah.
team.
I'm in agreement with you there, but I will note that like Houston has some of the kryptonite issues for OKC, right? They have some of the on-ball defense and isolation defense that can slow things down or make things more uncomfortable for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for Jalen Williams. They have the big inside threat that can really kind of uh, shift the gravity of the game, right? Like OKC, when they're really, really going quickly, that when they're at their best, the game is playing fast, the game is playing a little bit smaller, and the game is playing into pace and transition. And when you get these like big center of forces, Jokic, Şengün, who can slow the game down and kind of shift the gravity down to that end of the floor and make everybody on OKC pinch in a little bit, it saves transition time. Where OKC thrives is when you have a big that doesn't have that offensive gravity that they pull you back in, and they're slow to get back on defense. OKC destroys that stuff. But when you have that gravity offensively to put pressure on OKC's defense, like Şengün and Jokic can, it does present some challenges for Oklahoma City. So I think Houston's a really, really good matchup. I think they're better suited to play OKC than Dallas, even though the Dallas just beat OKC in a series in a one-game situation. I think they're a little bit better suited. But yeah, I would still take OKC.
Yep. I did. FanDuel has the Houston -2.5 up, so I'm in there.
There you go.
So excited for that. Go Rockets. I'm Sam was the big Rockets guy preseason. I've been
Yes.
making so many Rockets related bets that I've been enjoying. All right. So we're predicting you said OKC, right? You think OKC edges them out?
I do. I think,
Yep.
yeah, I think we're looking at an OKC New York Knicks final would be my prediction, and I will take the Oklahoma City Thunder to be the Emirates NBA Cup champions this year.
Yep, I'm with you there. A lot of orange and blue out in Vegas for sure. So I'm with you. I think OKC is just playing really well. Getting Hartenstein back, I think, really adds a different dynamic where when the situation calls for it, they can rebound just enough. They're still getting killed on the boards with Hartenstein back, but the way they could just on ball defense, I think this game could be called more playoff style. Where I think that would work in their favor. So yeah, don't give up PJ Washington games and take it down OKC. All right. Anything else to get us out of here?
As always, appreciate your guys' support tuning in. If you'd like to show your support for us digitally, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Establish the Run NBA on YouTube. You can also like this video if you're watching on YouTube. That helps feed that algorithm, or you can leave a comment and a rating and a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to. That also helps circulate our content and gives us feedback that can help improve this show. If you're interested in joining us for any of the premium content this season, you can check out establishthorun.com/subscribe-NBA for more details on our premium product offerings on the DFS side and on the prop side. We're really proud of the work that we do behind the scenes, trying to project each and every player, each and every night, and we think we do it really well. We'd love to have the opportunity to earn your business, so check us out on the premium side there. And we will be back next week. We will be back on Thursday to recap the quarterfinal rounds, and that will be Mike and another guest. We'll figure out that other guest from the ETR team, as next week I will be traveling to Nashville for the NFL Live Final for DraftKings. So you will hear from me again in 2 weeks, but Mike and one of the other ETR team members will review the quarterfinal rounds of the in-season tournament next week.
Yep, Dink too good at NFL for us. I will share that Sam and I were like, "How does Dink do it? How does he so good at NFL when like we pour our hearts into NBA and like this dude still comes out there just crushes NFL?" So, shout out to you, shout out to everyone listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.